In this video, let's learn a little bit more about loops and also introduce some random values. So we'll just do a simple coin flip simulator. We'll just call it coin flip sim. And I think I'm going to be consistent in my naming. I use capitals usually. Coin flip sim. There we go. Okay, and then inside of this again, we'll open up our command prompt. .NET new console. And then code dot to open it up in VS Code. Alrighty, program.cs, and let's get our environment set up. Zoom that bad boy in. Sorry, resize it, and also do, I don't need as much width on this because I'd like more width here. Okay. Alright, let's get our title, simple coin flip simulator, and again we'll do our nullable disable and the console.clear. Okay, and this one, let's just rock and roll right away with, actually, you know what, let's start with the random. In order to do random, we need to create a random object. So whenever we make a variable, right, I have to declare what type it is, and this is actually going to be of type random. I'm just going to call it RND, short for random, and it's going to be assigned a new random object. Now, we haven't talked about object-oriented programming yet, but basically this is, random is I guess a class that's used to make objects, and we can create a new object that's going to be of type random. Okay, and that's what this variable is. RND is my variable that's of a random type. Okay, and this is just built into C#, this random class that we can use to create random objects. All right, and then what we can do is let's do a loop right away. Let's loop however many times we want, times. And print out a random, well, let's just whatever, and get a random number. Okay, so first of all, to loop a set number of times, we've talked about while loops a little bit, but for loops, again, if you're coming from JavaScript, for loops are identical, just of course variables are a little different. I'm going to create an int, so I have to declare, right, a variable here, int n, which I'm going to initialize to 1, let's say. And then a semicolon. My test is going to be n is less than or equal to 10, and I want to go n++. Right? Remember, n++ is the same as n is assigned n+1, which is the same as n plus equals 1, which is the same as n++. All right. So this should loop 10 times, right? It counts n as 1, and then 2, and then 3, all the way up to 10. And inside of here, we're just going to do a console dot write line, and here's how I get my random number. I go rnd dot next. Okay, and the dot next gives me a random integer, and I give it a low value. So let's just go, 1 to 11, let's say. And the first value is my low value, and it's inclusive. This is my high value or my stop value, and it's exclusive. So this should get me between, actually let's do a smaller number so I can make sure I get all of them. Let's go 1 to 5, so it should give me a 1, 2, 3, or a 4. Okay, and we'll do that 20 times, and let's see what we get. Okay, so .NET run here, and it should clear the console, and then loop 20 times. Give me my 20 numbers, random numbers between 1 and 4. So we got some 1s, we got some 2s, we got some 4s, we got some 3s. Looks good. Okay, cool. So that's basically the new skills, right? Create this random object, random.next, and you can specify a low or a high, and it gives you a random integer between this value and up to this value. So if I wanted to do this as a coin flip, I would go 1, 3, let's say. And let's not do a console.writeLine, but let's store this into a variable so it returns an integer. So int rand num is assigned random.next, and then we just do an if statement. if random is less than equals 1. I'm used to JavaScript where we always get random decimals between 0 and 1, so you want to check between 0.5. So if it equals 1, we're going to go console.writeLine heads, else console.writeLine tails. And I think that should be good. 20 times, and I'll get a random number between either 1 or 2. If it's 1, it's heads. If it's 2, it's going to be tails. And I don't have to go random equals 2. It's just an else, right? There's only 2 possibilities. So .NET run. And there we go. Heads, tails, tails, blah, 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 blah. Away we go. Okay, now, again, another thing that we can use with our variables, of course, is if we wanted to do a count. Int count is not 1, but 0. We initialize it to 0. And then every, oh no, hold on. What do I want to count? Let's do a head count and a tail count. And then in my loop, if I get heads, we will go head count plus plus, tail count plus plus. Right, this is a pretty common algorithm, right? Initialize your variable, your counter variable to 0. When something happens, you add to your counter, and then once the loop is done, let's output our results. And we'll just do a console.writeLine. I'm going to do one of those template string things, string templates, and we'll just say num heads, and then in a colon we'll do our head, our colon, sorry, a brace that, and then num tails, inside the brace, our tail count. Okay, I think that makes sense, right? Initialize those variables, we do the loop, it counts them, prints out the results, and then at the end we'll get our final thing. All right, let's try that. Okay, so 8 heads and 12 tails. Perfect. Run it again, and we get 11 heads and 9 tails, and of course we can change the number of times we do this. 500, let's say. Right, play around with your loop, and we've got 252 heads and 248 tails, and we're simulating, right? Random numbers, checking what's going to happen based on the random number, and of course you can do multiple possibilities, right? Change the range that this is to get different options, and that's loops and counters and random. Okay, all right, I hope that made sense. Take care, and we'll see you in the next video.